Welcome. I'm certified ADHD life coach Stuart and your chief motivation officer. I'm collecting 100 compelling stories that have changed lives. They're told by ADHDers for ADHDers and their friends and family. Today, may Robert's story of positivity, persistence, and gratitude open our eyes and hearts to the life-changing transformations that are possible for us all. Robert, welcome to 100 ADHD success stories.
Thank you, Stuart.
I'm glad you're here. And I want to welcome Rick Webster, CEO of Renify. How's it going, Rick?
It's going excellent.
Robert, before we really get into your amazing story, and I chose those words of introduction purposefully, of persistence, of your determination, and your positivity, and of your gratitude. These are the things that struck me when we first met. It's really amazing. But first, if I was sitting in a room with your friends and family, with your inner circle, what words would they use to describe Robert?
Enthusiastic, compassionate, energetic, and loving and caring.
Nice. And let me ask you, take me back, I don't know, 5 or 10 years or 15, however many years ago, before you understood the ADHD thing, which we'll get to. Would they have used the same words or might they have been different?
Yes, I mean, they would have used them certainly here in the last 27 years. As you're aware that I'm sort of like, sober and clean. So, maybe before the 27 years, they may not quite use the same words.
Yeah.
They might, slightly different, a little bit kind of off key and a little bit, mad, don't know if that's the right word, mad, but just kind of a bit reckless.
Yeah.
More so.
I understand. So let's catch up, everybody, who you are today, where you are today. And then we're going to take a step backwards. We're going to go back to that yesterday, and we'll probably start off with that moment of ADHD discovery, which was more recent. But today, you're managing director and owner of Orion Building Solutions. Just describe briefly what that is and what you do.
Okay, so what I do today is I'm a managing director, as you say, of a successful building company, construction. And we do a lot of hospitality, so commercial hospitality. We do hotels, theatres, restaurants, and offices where we, recreate their spaces and bring them, update them and bring them to bespoke levels. And have done for quite a number of years. And it's been quite rewarding, sort of mentally, spiritually, and also financially challenging as well. But yeah, that's what I do.
So I'm going to jump to this right now because this career path, you managing lots of people and lots of real-time construction, I've got to believe that's a very high pressure situation, especially when you have deadlines to finish jobs. Answer this question for me, Robert. What do you think, now understanding better your ADHD, what do you think helps you? What skill sets help you to be successful at running your company?
Well, I'm very kind of physical, verbal. I'm not academic, and that is a lot about construction. So I've got a great team who deal with a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, the accreditations, paperwork, invoices, risk assessments, etc. I deal with, I sort of sail the ship. I deal with guys, hire, fire, confrontations. And my ADHD served, now I understand, it served me incredibly well. As in, I've got the gift of the gab, I can really talk and self-taught, it's not come from, I've not come from like, university or, high level of education. It's all self-taught, but I've got a lot of gratitude for ADHD because I now discovered it is about ADHD that's given me this quality. I discovered it a few years back and it's like, wow, it's great.
Yeah. So you had used the word overchat when we were talking earlier over threat. So now you've learned how to leverage that, right, in today's job in terms of speaking and managing and having really fearless conversations with people. Well, I'm sure with clients and your team. But now take me back to the over chat before your ADHD. Tell me about what that was like before you knew who you were and why you did the things you did. Because you said to me you got yourself into trouble a couple of times.
Yeah. So shall I take you back to a little bit of my upbringing, and
Please.
how I kind of worked. So I was brought up of a Scots descent. I come from Scotland, large family, and we went down to London when I was 2, the East End of London, which was a rough part of London, and I was running wild, and being a kid, and it was great. A lot of freedom to run around, and slowly, I had this immense energy, which I now know to be ADHD. People couldn't keep up with me. People was like, I was really full on. Anyway, I kind of sadly got thrown out of school at 11, which was really, looking back now, is quite sad. But and I had such energy, they just couldn't contain me. And back then, that was like 40 whatever, a lot of years ago. They didn't know about ADHD. They didn't know about autisms and dyslexia. And so I was thrown out, and then I was sort of like passed from pillar to post to like special schools and put in care, and I was then on the fringe of getting in trouble, and and dabbling with various substances and high risk taking, which looking back now and knowing a bit more about the ADHD is very much about the ADHD kind of just didn't have a lot of self-worth as a kid, didn't know who I was, didn't just kind of really lost. A real lost child, but was out there creating and would overcompensate a lot to try and get attention, all in the wrong ways. And again, looking back, I can now see reason being because of the ADHD. And then went on to, again, as I was saying, high risk taking. Got in a bit of trouble with the law and kind of was borderline in playing around with sort of like alcohol from young, and dabbling with drugs, and sadly by my sort of teens and early adult, I was pretty much getting hooked into that way of life on the wrong side of the law, shall we say. And it wasn't before long I realized I was kind of pretty lost. So I really felt it was really difficult I didn't fit in. I didn't feel I ever fitted in anywhere. I didn't feel like people understood me, because I always had this kind of imposter syndrome that I didn't feel, good enough, and because I wasn't educated, and people would be talking. I didn't even know what certain words meant, and going along, my journey was I went to rehab after rehab, and I learned a lot of stuff in rehab that I should have learned in school, sadly, and but. I never sort of take it away. I learned a lot of good stuff there. I learned, about addiction and why one, reacts and takes and, goes out there and does what we do. And it took me 10 years before the kind of penny dropped and I was ready to surrender. I'd had enough of that way of life. So I kind of had quite a few rock bottoms, we call them.
Right.
And
you would call it scraping the barrel, I think. Right.
Barrel, absolutely. Scraping the barrel and looking for a way out. And again, I need to emphasize that ADHD is giving me the ability to not surrender easily and keep trying, keep going, and sometimes that had a negative effect where I would end up, hitting walls because I didn't surrender, I didn't give in. So I was, sadly, but going forward on a positive, it kind of also got me out of the barrel. It got me out of that barrel. It got me out into the light where I started creating a life. And I lost my mum. She passed away. And that's where my big change happened. And
when your big change happened, was that a moment of self reflection and introspection? Did the ADHD discovery come then too? Describe that moment and then go to that ADHD discovery moment?
Okay, so it was 95, October the 23rd, 95, that I kind of came to a point of surrender, and where I had to change. And had I not changed, I don't know where I would have gone. It would have been, it was a bit of Russian roulette. And I did change, and I never looked back. And I kept going forward. And, I think, Stuart, I've mentioned before, I'm in a 12-step fellowship. So that's been a great support and help. And I started, basically changing the way I lived, and, and didn't use any substances anymore, and alcohol. And when I got some proper work, but I got a job, because I wasn't, I had no qualifications. So I got a job labouring. And that labouring job was the start of many great things to happen, because it was really humbling. It was like, £35, which would be equivalent of maybe $40, $50. And this was someone who had also had a lot of money, who was now just kind of broken and was trying to rebuild my life. And and I was so grateful and so happy to start this new way. And I didn't find out about the ADHD till quite a few years later. So here I was now with ADHD, being unaware of it, but, sober and clean, and trying to build my life into, a productive member of society, trying to do the right thing. And I did. And I sort of, this is when I sort of created a construction business. And I went from labourer to plasterer to, multi-skilled, and into realizing I was really good with people. Because previously I've worked in sales and had my own, I've done quite a lot of things. I've had stores and ice cream vans, and I've made many ways I've made money. I've never, I've tried lots of things, as we do. Again, I discovered ADHD. We try many things.
Right.
Great entrepreneurs. And, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, I kind of met a beautiful woman traveling the world. I love traveling. I love different cultures, and I've traveled quite a lot. And she became my wife. We've got 2 beautiful children. And this is when ADHD started facing me via the children.
Okay.
We started noticing something wasn't right with the children. And it then reflected back to me. And I then got a diagnosis in lockdown. So I'm very late diagnosed.
So this was recent. This was in the last 2-3 years.
Yes. 2 years ago, I got diagnosed. Just over.
Describe that moment. What was that like? Where were you, and how did you feel? How did you find out?
Well, I was right here where I'm speaking, and it was online. It was a doctor psychologist, and we had 4-hour session. And I kind of knew I had it because I could see it, there was a lot of things with the kids, and I could really identify. And my wife was very good at reflecting back that, she was the one who encouraged me to get diagnosed. And when I did, it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't overwhelming at all. It was like, wow, okay, so I've got this, okay. But I always had the mindset, well, I am who I am, and I'll get on with regardless. I don't really, it's not going to affect me. But how wrong was I? How wrong was I? Because when I did dig deeper, I tried some, again, as you're aware, I'm in a fellowship, and I'm sober and clean. I'm, a number of years, and I wanted to check out the medication because my children was taking the medication, and I thought I wanted to feel what it was like. Would it change some of the I now know the stuff that I struggle mentally sometimes with, and let me have a go at this. And I tried it for 6 weeks, and which I believe wasn't long enough, and it was only one medication. It didn't feel right. It did not feel, not for me. And I know we're all different, and some people, my children take it. It helps them mentally in school for focus, and to stay still, because they're very fidgety. It's another symptom of ADHD, can be very fidgety. And I thought I want to know more about it, so I then embarked on doing a diploma in ADHD life coaching mentoring. And it was like, now I want to know about ADHD. And that's when my life changed. That's when I got that, wow, It blew me away completely. And that's when I met yourself. It blew me away completely. And
do you recall something when you, so what I'm hearing, Robert, is that when you got the diagnosis, it sort of, it impressed you, but you weren't terribly surprised because you kind of saw the writing on the wall, if you will. And then it sounds to me like when you were with community, when you were with other adults who were adults with ADHD, that was the moment of sort of your mind was blown. Why? Explain. Give us an example.
yeah, okay. So an example was there was a group of us, and all of a sudden we would be talking at different levels, and it was like, seeing it's like a mirror effect. It was like seeing myself. It's like, oh God, I'm not the only one who does that. I was always in a situation where it was like, you're too much, you're on top, you're really forceful, you're really there. And many things, sadly, a lot of negative messages. And it's like, I then discovered this group of people who have got the same as myself. And then the literature and the teaching, and we went through this teaching of, what ADHD is about. And, it was like, it was grieving. I grieved and I got quite emotional. It was like the missing puzzle. It was like all of a sudden, it's like, that's why I do that. That's why I'm like that. You could tell me that, but when I actually was in an arena and the literature, homework, I was looking at stuff and reading stuff, finding out more about ADHD. It was just mind blowing. It just blew me away. And I just wanted to know more about this now, because it was like, this is a major part of who I am. The driving force, the negative side of me, the positive side of me, the successful side of me, the disruptive side who got into mischief. And, it was, it was like really powerful, really, really blew me away more than anything else I've done in my life. This has been so powerful. And, hence, doing the course wasn't cheap, and I wanted to know more, and I want to continue going on, which I am, to do work with ADHD and people.
And that's the other part of this amazing story, is that after your discovery, and let me acknowledge, and I think all of us right now understand, appreciate, acknowledge, and respect your sobriety for all these years. There is no greater accomplishment. So I just want to acknowledge that, and I think we all share in that. You decided to also to become a certified ADHD life coach, and in the process of meeting this other community, it was not only learning the skills to become a coach, a certified coach, right? But also you learned so much more about yourself. And how has that, in these past couple of years, and I know you do coaching now in addition to your full-time job as managing director and owner of your company, how has that been? Have you elevated parts of your life? Have you understood some areas that were challenging to you that you've been able to bump up, and some of those super high, have you been able to regulate more? Give us a story about an after effect of learning so much more about Robert.
Yeah, well, I think there's, we hear the word often, procrastination. And, I used to believe I was a great procrastinator. But today I know it's not procrastination. Today I'm aware that it's a struggle that I have through having ADHD, that I'm great. It's like my mind and my body are not talking sometimes together. And I know what I need to do, but I can't physically, which I now know why. And it's like I have to sort of like do extra little tasks and set certain little things in place to make sure I just get up and get on with it. It's really, just kind of overreacting sometimes. And certainly in the high pressure job I do, there's dealing with some of the individuals and characters I have to deal with. I'd react in maybe an overreaction in a situation, whereas now I'm able to kind of say, hold on, just step back.
And so in that moment, take us to a moment, Robert, either at work or at home, where you feel yourself, can I say the word spiraling? You feel the energy picking up, and you catch yourself. How do you do it? Do you have a mantra? Do you have a practice? How do you, how are you aware, and what do you do?
What's been a great help for me is I've done a lot of inside work. So like, meditation, breathing work, I've been to ashrams. I've done been a lot of soul searching. So, and then to get to this point where I now discovered I've got ADHD in the way I behave in certain fashions. So a great one that's been really, really helpful has been the breathing. I do breathing and some yoga and cold showers. And that starts my day, which is an absolute fantastic way to start. And I generally start pretty much, I don't start off with a really busy committee in my head. Wow, what's going on? I'm pretty grounded. I can see where I'm going. The windows are clean. And I feel very strong and confident in embarking in the day and getting on with my day. And then there's moments when I might be in a situation, going back to what you said, I'm in a situation where how do I react? How do I deal with the situation? And generally, through doing that work, I'm in a much calmer, what I've discovered, I'm in a much calmer place when I'm doing stuff and working on my inside than not doing stuff. When I'm not working on myself, I'm not looking, I'm not doing meditating or breathing and, the stuff that's good for me, mentally. I can react in a negative way. Yeah. So I generally find when I'm doing healthy things for my mind and my body, my spirit, I can generally deal with most.
Oh, that's very encouraging, because so many ADHDers, when they hear the word meditation, they kind of, I can't meditate. I can't keep a quiet mind for that long. What's your strategy? Because meditation doesn't necessarily mean quieting the mind and being still. It could have other definitions.
Yeah. I mean, so I've done quite a few different meditations, and I'm going to mention some names, and whether that's the right or wrong thing, but I'll mention them. So I've done some Osho meditating, which is physical meditations. There's Kundalini. There's it's very physical, so it's not sitting still like so. It's not, and then I've done transcendental meditation, which is then again sitting in a nice relaxed posture where you just relax and allow your mind to be. And it's not controlling the mind. This has been my experience, and it's not, and having a mantra, and you go to that mantra, and you come back, and if the mind gets busy, allow it to get busy, but to come back to your mantra, and eventually, my experience again is I go to that place of just transcending, and it's like, wow. And again, it's having the patience I've discovered, because I can be very impatient sometimes. Another ADHD trait. I want it to happen now. I want it to happen quickly. If it doesn't happen quickly, I don't want to be involved. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Slow down. Just try and take it easy and allow yourself to process and feel the process. And it might not happen the first few times. It might take a little bit of time. But again, I'm a believer. I'm a great believer. I believe in blind faith, and, I'll give things a go. And, it's one of my assets. I think we've spoken about this, Stuart, is, I really believe we can do anything if we put our mind to it. Yeah. And I believe, anything's possible. So I've tried many things, and some of them have worked for me and some haven't.
Yeah. You had said, even before you enrolled in ADHD school, that you took a deep dive. Anything come to mind? Anything you could share, particular books or YouTubers or influencers, or what did you read? What did you see? Can you give us some examples?
Okay, so when you say take a deep dive, do you mean some of the stuff that helps me?
When you began that personal path of understanding more about ADHD and who you are and why you are, I'm just wondering if there was a book, for instance.
I think a lot of it was, so I'm surrounded with a lot of sort of, shall we say, kind of spiritual people where they're doing various stuff and they're working with themselves, or they've got workshops, or they've got yoga centers, or whatever, or they're doing various sort of like retreats. So I've got a great sort of network of people I can tap into. But my one is I'll Google stuff. I'll go online and Google. So if I'm struggling with something, let me have a look. Let me have a look online. Let me see what's out there, and then sort of start researching. Now, I'm not great academic, so this is such a big thing for me to then go in and start looking and researching stuff.
Right.
And doing the ADHD course was it took me way out of my comfort zone because I'm a physical person. I'll go out and make a block. I'll make things happen. I'll go out and do a lot of construction stuff physically. But when it comes to sitting still doing academic stuff, it takes me out of my comfort zone. But what I discovered, what really helped, is just going out and trying new things like the breathing, the cold showers, meditating, trying another meditation, walking. I love walking. I go to the forest and I walk. I've got a beautiful dog. We do walking. I go down the coast. I swim in the sea, cold times of the year. Just take myself out of my comfort zone. And it's when I'm sitting too still too long, my mind sometimes can take me, my ADHD can take me backwards.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being so raw with us and sharing your experiences and your routines and your habits. Clearly, I know for me, and I wonder if everyone, and Rick and everyone with us now, if they also experience that same sense of reset or freedom or recharge when they go outside. Just go outside. Go for that walk, whether it's the walk, whether it's a run, whether it's walking the dog or walking with a partner, that can be freeing, not having walls, not having a ceiling, but sort of seeing just blue sky and almost an infinity. So that it was beautiful you shared that. Now, you said when we were talking that part of your today's mission, very near and dear to your heart, really struck me as really an amazing product of who you are and where you are, which is ADHD in the UK. So I'm just going to give it that headline. Describe that. How is it in the UK, and what are your goals?
So ADHD in the UK is still a little bit under the radar. It's not quite, again, there's not a lot of, to get a diagnosis privately, you could still be waiting up to like 6 to 9 months through the system on the NHS, which is through the government, where you don't have to pay, is maybe 2 to 3 years waiting list, which I find very sad that, there's, so people who haven't got the finances to access, a diagnosis or help, they're really at the back of the queue, which is a real sad situation. So where I'd like to make a difference and an impact is, so in construction, as you're aware, Stuart, I've done very well financially. We've been very successful. We've turned it into a multi-million-pound business, which has been great. But I feel now I need to give something back where I've now discovered, and also it's great to be there for the kids and know more about what's going on, because they're going to need me at different levels, different times in their life, I believe, with this, because this can be, not everyone has a positive story about ADHD, sadly, so I want to work with setups, and I want to go out and I want to I'd love to be able to try and set something up. I will set something up where we can get hopefully people diagnosed and get them immediate coaching, support, doing some outdoor stuff. I think because outdoors, there's a lot of stuff you can do to help just, stimulate the brain by doing activities, going out in the forest or in the woods, walking, and do it collectively with groups. I think it's a great help for people with ADHD.
Yep. I think that's great. Very inspiring. And I hope that we can check in again, whether it's 6 months or a year, to see how that path, how your life coach is going, in addition to the business that you run, and how you've been able to make an impact in other people's lives as well. But there's a couple of things I need to take you back, if you don't mind, because this might be a painful word to hear debt. You were in debt.
Yes.
Can you, and probably it's a whole other conversation, but how did you do it? How did you manage your way through that?
Okay. So in our last recession, worldwide recession we had, so at that time, I was doing domestic construction, and it fell on the floor where there was no work, and we had a lifestyle, but my wife was the main breadwinner at that time. After I fell on the floor with the work, but I kept trying, I kept trying to make things happen, setting up new businesses, and it wasn't happening. And as I say, I lived in the country, and I'm up and down the motorway from London to the country, and slowly, I borrowed a lot of money. Where it was like £140,000. And but again, it's quite incredible because I've never ever felt, overwhelmed that I'm stuck. I'm never going to get out of this. I couldn't see any way out. I'm very optimistic and I'm very positive that I will find a way out, no matter what. I will not give in. And I kept trying, and eventually I got through, and I got a little number up in working in the University of Arts, and all of a sudden it was like, my aim was £500 a week, £1,000 a week, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And slowly the debt got paid, and we was able to fulfill our dream. We always wanted to take the children around the world, and we did that. We planned it over 2 years while we was rising in the business and making good money. And then we took the children. We planned it really properly, and we took them around the world to 20 countries, and 2 ADHD children, a father with ADHD, and my wife's got autism. It's amazing. And we had the most amazing journey.
Wow.
It was fantastic.
Wow. That's so beautiful. That's beautiful. You had mentioned meds before. Just maybe some of us are just curious. Do you take any ADHD med? You don't have to reveal which, but do you not? Because I know, especially for you with sobriety, that's a question there. But does that play a role in your life?
No, I as I said earlier on, I tried, but I didn't give it long enough. But it brought me back. It had sort of like a bit of a wave effect on me, where I'd had experience with drugs, so it took me back to whether it be ecstasy or trips like LSD, and I just felt different. Like, whoa, hold on, and there was times it just didn't feel right.
Yeah,
and I really believe and trust my intuition, and I trust my gut, and my gut was like, this is not for me. It's not for me, and I will support people who need to do it. I've worked with people who take, and it's like, great if it does, and it works for you, fantastic. But it didn't fit for me.
Yep.
And I was okay to opt out because I've also got a lot of other great coping strategies.
Yeah.
As I said, the breathing, the meditation, being quite active in work. I'm active, so that helped tremendously.
Right. Yep. Coping strategies. You have a toolbox. You have created resources, and some may work for you. They may work for me. They may not. What's beautiful is while we're all part of the same community, we don't all present the same. We all don't have the same solutions or the same systems or the same habits. And that's why coaching is so great for those ADHDers who've never experienced that. And that's why trying new things, give it a go, try it. If it works, keep going. You never know. And also, if you have a strategy that you think, oh, everyone must be doing this, you might be surprised that nobody else is doing it. So share it. And I'm saying this to you and others, with others in your community, because they may have not thought of it.
No, absolutely. I think there's a great point there, Stuart, and that is about, try it, and it's like, just give it a go and try it. And if it doesn't feel right, give it a few goes. Don't sorry. I mean, I do philosophies like we have in the fellowship. Give it 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and try different, and see. Just give it, because you'll find maybe 60 days you just maybe not getting there. And then 90 days you're like, wow, this really works. 30 days is not quite, or you might get it in 30 days, but it's like, setting, I set little tasks for myself, and they generally work. They generally work. And it's and also it's, for myself, I find it a very loving act, that I'm worth it. I'm going to give this a go because I'm worth it. I don't just want to be stuck in the head, going round and round and round, like the racing car brain. And so
Beautiful. So well said, Robert. Really, so well, so inspiring. So right before we can open it up for any questions, if Rick or anybody with us have any questions, we're happy to address them. But you earlier in our dialogue, Robert, you described yourself before. Let's just call it the old Robert, who
yeah,
who was and is the real Robert. I mean, it was always you. You've 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 been on a path. An imposter, that you had that what we know of in the ADHD community, we call the imposter syndrome.
mm-hmm.
I get the feeling that that's not true for you today.
No, 9 out of 10, not from today. I don't allow it to come in and sort of tell me that I can't do this, or these people or this energy is better than I am, and I don't know, and I'm stupid. And it's like, no, I don't go there. I don't. It doesn't even come in. But on a bad day, when maybe my resources are down and I'm feeling a little vulnerable and I'm feeling a little bit out of sync, it might slip in. But I generally will not put myself in a vulnerable situation, and I keep myself safe.
Yeah.
So, and that's a great thing that I'm aware today that, you know what, I'm not feeling too good and to deal with this situation, so I won't go there.
Right.
I'll keep myself safe.
Self-awareness is probably the most important thing out of anything, because we're not aware of how we're feeling. And it's harder for us to understand our actions, and because we move so fast, right, like a reflex, it's important that we try to catch it, without that executive functioning to say, no, maybe I shouldn't say that, maybe I shouldn't do that. The more aware we are, the more practiced we are at that, the better we get. It's not about perfection, although some of us love that word or fear that word. It's about progress, not perfection. Progress. One final question, Robert, if you don't mind sharing, and then let's see if anybody's had any questions, and that is your kids. Can you give us an overview of stuff you do as their dad, their ADHD dad? Is there anything you want to share with us that you find has been nourishing for them in their path as young kids?
Yes, I mean, they are both very sporty, so for better or worse, we made a decision to, because we had the finances to put them in private school, due to the fact that we felt they would get a bit more attention, and it was a good private school where they get a lot of sports, and there's a lot, they get a lot more of a deal than in the mainstream. We felt we might lose them a bit and they might not quite get what they need, so we did that. And so my son is very sporty. He does a lot of cricket, rugby, football. He loves, and he's very physical. Again, they're not massively over academic, but they're both very art. They love arts, IT, media. But they're very kind of into, again, I see so much myself in them. So I do a lot of physical stuff with them. It was like when we was traveling the world, I would do physical stuff. My wife would do the academic. She'd done the whole homeschooling academic, and I would do the physics, like the swimming and sailing and whatever it is, bodyboarding and surfing, and yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
So you capitalized on your strengths, and it sounds like the kids are active, which we all know. Active movement is so important. It's so healing and helps us flourish. So we keep busy, keep the dopamine flowing, and we keep active. I appreciate you sharing that about your kids very much. I'm sure that that as they grow and as they learn your story, and that they are already inspired by the massive movement you've had in your life of resilience, of persistence, tenacity. I love using all these synonyms because they all fit you. And I can't tell you how grateful I am, Robert, that you came here. The UK, as if you're sitting right here in the office with us, and shared to inspire us. And I want to ask Rick. Rick, did you have any questions, any comments?
Yeah, I'm fascinated. I feel like in some ways, I'm hearing my own life kind of read back to me in some ways. Not exactly, but there's some really serious common threads. I was really pleased actually to hear you talk as a parent about giving your kids proper medication, because that's one of the things that interrupts this process that you went through and makes it a lot easier for them coming forward. I think that's just fantastic. A lot of times people with, that don't understand ADHD, they think we don't persevere, and you're clearly the opposite of that. And I think we persevere like crazy. We may have difficulties with that, but we really work hard at things. Another aspect I think is a common thread for ADHD people is we do have a hard time with academics, right? They give us a book and give us a chair and say, okay, it's all equal. Go read the book, but we can't sit there long enough to read the book. So it's not equitable in a way. But what that turns out later on is we become lifelong learners once we figure out the way that works for us. And clearly you're a lifelong learner. And maybe the biggest thing for me, the biggest takeaway for me here, and it's my own belief as well, we grow up trying to belong to the tribe. And so we want to fit in, and we develop this facade of what we think they need so that we don't get, marginalized from the tribe. So this idea of being authentic is just a huge ADHD remediation, right? Once we start saying, this is who I am, right? I don't need to pretend to be somebody else anymore. Then we don't have to waste all that bandwidth on that facade anymore. And we have all the energy to, to live our own life. I found it fascinating, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Rick, thank you very much. And everyone who's with us, watching it live or watching the recording, we appreciate you being here. Robert, thank you so much for having a conversation with us and sharing this. It is an inspiring success story.
Thank you very much, Stuart. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you guys for hearing me and listening to me.
It was great.
Just a message for everybody who's with us right now. Do you know someone who has a story to tell about a tiny triumph that was truly a major milestone? You may be that ADHD adult or know someone who is. Be one of my 100 success stories. Send me a voice memo or connect with me on Instagram or Facebook and make today extraordinary. Rick, thank you. Robert, thank you.